When the summer sun scorches the land and modern gardens wilt under pressure, Amish gardens keep thriving, lush, productive, and unfazed. What's their secret? It's not fancy gadgets or chemical shortcuts. It's time-tested wisdom, deep-rooted traditions, and natural methods that work with nature, not against it. While most modern gardeners panic when the weather forecast shows a week without rain, Amish gardens keep producing vegetables like nothing happened. The secret isn't some fancy irrigation system or expensive drought-resistant hybrids from a catalog. It's crops that know how to dig deep and find water where other plants give up looking. Dent corn, the backbone of many Amish farms, sends roots down 6 to 8 feet into the soil. When surface moisture disappears and shallow-rooted plants start wilting, these corn stalks are still pulling water from deep underground reserves that most gardeners never even think about. The same principle applies to okra, which thrives in heat that would kill more delicate vegetables and develops root systems that reach down 3 to 4 feet. The difference between shallow and deep roots becomes obvious during dry spells. Lettuce and radishes, with their networks of fine surface roots, need constant moisture because they can't reach water more than a few inches down. But crops like Jerusalem artichokes or asparagus develop root systems so extensive they can survive weeks without irrigation by tapping into moisture that exists far below the garden surface. Modern gardening is like trying to drink from a puddle when there's a well right next to it. Amish gardeners just know where to dig. Seed saving plays a crucial role in developing these heat-hardy varieties. Every fall, Amish gardeners collect seeds from the plants that perform best during the hottest, driest parts of summer. This isn't random selection. They're specifically choosing plants that stayed green and productive when others struggled, slowly building varieties that thrive in extreme conditions. This natural selection process works over decades. A family might start with regular tomato seeds, but after 20 years of saving seeds only from plants that survived heat waves, they end up with varieties that are uniquely adapted to their specific climate and soil conditions. These aren't available in any catalog because they're custom evolved for local growing conditions. The root development of these selected varieties starts early and goes deep fast. While hybrid vegetables from seed companies might put most of their energy into quick top growth, Amish varieties often focus on establishing strong root systems first. This means slower initial growth above ground, but much better survival rates when stress hits. Traditional corn varieties, like the dent corn favored by many Amish communities, develop what botanists call adventitious roots. These are extra roots that grow from the stem nodes above the main root system, creating additional anchors that can find moisture and nutrients. Modern corn hybrids often lack this trait because it was bred out in favor of uniform appearance. The timing of root development matters too. Deep-rooted varieties often send down their main taproot early in the season when soil moisture levels are still high from spring rains. By the time summer heat arrives, these plants already have access to water sources that surface-rooted crops can't reach. Some Amish families maintain varieties that have been in their communities for 50 years or more. These seeds carry genetic adaptations that accumulated over multiple generations of selection for heat tolerance, drought resistance, and local soil conditions. Each year's harvest represents another step in the ongoing development of better adapted crops. The vigor of deep-rooted plants shows up in ways beyond just drought tolerance. These varieties often produce better yields during normal weather too, because their extensive root systems can access more nutrients from a larger volume of soil. They're not just surviving stress, they're thriving in conditions that challenge other plants. This approach requires patience that modern gardening often lacks. Deep-rooted varieties might take longer to establish and produce their first harvest, but they keep producing reliably long after shallow-rooted crops have failed. It's a long-term strategy that prioritizes consistent performance over quick results, but keeping those roots healthy and productive requires more than just good genetics. Bare soil in summer heat acts like a frying pan, baking everything it touches and losing precious moisture to evaporation. Amish gardeners learned long ago that covering their garden beds with thick layers of organic material creates a completely different growing environment, one that stays cool and moist even when the weather turns brutal. The mulch materials come from whatever's available on the farm: straw from weed or oat harvests, wood chips from tree pruning, dried leaves collected each fall, or even old hay that's no longer good for feeding livestock. The key is laying it on thick, often 4 to 6 inches deep, which is much heavier than the light dusting most modern gardeners apply. Mulching lightly is like wearing a thin t-shirt in a snowstorm. Technically, it's covering, but good luck staying comfortable. This thick mulch layer works like insulation for the soil underneath. On days when surface temperatures reach 100 degrees or higher, properly mulched soil stays 20 to 30 degrees cooler. That temperature difference means the root zone remains in a comfortable range for plant growth, while unmulched gardens turn into hostile environments. Moisture retention becomes almost magical with heavy mulching. Rain or irrigation water that hits mulch beds soaks down into the soil instead of running off or evaporating quickly. The organic mulch acts like a sponge, absorbing water during wet periods and releasing it slowly as plants need it. Some Amish gardeners report cutting their watering needs in half simply by maintaining proper mulch coverage. The only product we'll ever promote on our channel is a book by Claude Davis, a veteran prepper, about 126 superfoods and preservation methods from crisis times like the Great Depression and wartime that are impossible to find elsewhere. We decided to promote his book because we are the last generation able to share these techniques and superfoods to our children or grandchildren. It would be a shame to see this information about highly nutritious foods and preservation methods to survive crises disappear. You can also find a book about herbal remedies from Nicole Apelian on their store. If you're watching this on TV, you can look up our channel, Frugal Solutions, on your phone or tablet and find the books by clicking the link in our channel description or any other video description. The material choice affects how well the mulch performs. Straw mulch allows air and water to penetrate easily while still providing excellent insulation and weed suppression. Wood chips break down more slowly, but provide long-lasting coverage that doesn't need frequent renewal. Dried leaves create a dense mat that's particularly effective at holding moisture, but may need periodic stirring to prevent matting. Weed suppression is an enormous benefit that saves countless hours of cultivation work. When mulch is applied thick enough, most weed seeds can't get the light they need to germinate. The few weeds that do emerge are easy to pull from the soft, moist soil underneath the mulch. This eliminates the need for constant hoeing and cultivation that disturbs plant roots and exposes soil to drying. Application timing matters as much as thickness. Amish gardeners typically apply mulch after plants are well established, but before the heat of summer arrives. This gives crops time to grow through the mulch layer while ensuring maximum protection during the stress periods. Fresh mulch applied too early in spring can slow soil warming and delay plant growth. The mulch gradually breaks down throughout the growing season, adding organic matter directly to the soil. This decomposition process improves soil structure, increases water holding capacity, and feeds beneficial soil organisms. What starts as a protective covering ends up becoming part of the soil itself, improving growing conditions for future seasons. Some Amish communities practice year-round mulching, adding fresh material each season and maintaining constant soil coverage. This creates a system where the soil never experiences the extreme temperature swings and moisture loss that damage plant roots and soil structure. The result is gardens that become more resilient and productive over time. Different crops benefit from different mulching strategies. Heat-loving plants like tomatoes and peppers appreciate mulch that keeps their root zones consistently moist without cooling the soil too much. Cool season crops like lettuce and spinach benefit from heavier mulch that provides maximum cooling during hot weather transitions. But even the best mulch coverage can't help plants that get watered at the wrong time of day. Timing is everything when it comes to watering plants, and the Amish figured this out long before anyone understood the science behind it. While most people water their gardens whenever they remember or whenever it's convenient, Amish gardeners stick to a strict schedule early morning before the sun gets serious about heating things up. The science behind morning watering is surprisingly complex, but the results are simple to see. When water hits plant leaves and soil in the early morning hours, it has time to soak in and get to work before evaporation starts stealing it away. By the time the sun reaches full strength around mid-morning, the plants have already absorbed what they need, and any excess moisture on the leaves has dried off naturally. Watering plants at noon in summer is like trying to fill a bucket that has holes in the bottom. Technically, water is going in, but most of it's not staying where you want it. Evaporation rates change dramatically throughout the day. Water applied at 6 in the morning might lose only 10 to 20% to evaporation before plants can use it. The same amount of water applied at 2 in the afternoon could lose 60 to 80% to evaporation, meaning most of the effort is literally going up in steam. The temperature difference between morning and midday watering affects plant stress in ways that aren't immediately obvious. Cool morning water on warm soil creates a gentle temperature transition that plants handle easily. Hot afternoon water hitting sun-baked soil can shock plant roots and actually damage them, especially when the temperature difference is extreme. Disease prevention becomes a major benefit of morning watering schedules. Fungal problems like powdery mildew and bacterial diseases thrive when plant leaves stay wet overnight. Morning watering allows leaves to dry completely during the warmest part of the day, creating conditions that prevent disease organisms from establishing themselves. Plant metabolism also follows daily cycles that make morning watering more effective. During early morning hours, plants are actively taking up water and nutrients in preparation for the day's photosynthesis. Water applied during this active uptake period gets used immediately, rather than sitting around unused where it can be lost to evaporation or become a breeding ground for problems. The root zone benefits differently from morning versus evening watering too. Morning applications give roots all day to absorb moisture and distribute it throughout the plant before evening temperatures drop. Evening watering can leave soil saturated overnight, which can lead to root rot problems in some crops, especially during humid weather. Amish gardeners often start their watering before dawn, sometimes as early as 5 or 5:30 in the morning. This isn't just dedication, it's practical wisdom. The earlier the watering happens, the more time plants have to process the moisture before heat stress begins. Many experienced gardeners can finish watering their entire garden before most people are even awake. The watering technique itself matters as much as the timing. Amish gardeners typically water slowly and deeply, allowing moisture to penetrate the soil rather than just wetting the surface. This deeper watering encourages root systems to grow downward toward reliable moisture sources rather than staying shallow where they're vulnerable to heat stress. Equipment choices reflect the morning watering schedule too. Simple watering cans, basic hose systems, and gravity-fed irrigation allow for quiet early morning watering that doesn't disturb sleeping household members or neighbors. These low-tech methods also provide better control over water application rates and allow gardeners to check individual plants as they water. The habit of morning watering becomes deeply ingrained in Amish gardening routines because it works so reliably. Gardens watered early in the morning consistently outperform those watered at random times, and the difference becomes especially obvious during heat waves when proper timing can mean the difference between thriving plants and failed crops. But getting the most from each watering session requires more than just good timing when the garden beds themselves aren't designed to make the best use of available moisture. Ground-level gardens might seem like the natural way to grow plants, but Amish gardeners discovered long ago that lifting their growing beds above the surrounding soil creates better conditions for both plants and the people tending them. These aren't the fancy manufactured raised bed kits you see in modern garden centers, but hand-built structures that solve real problems with heat, drainage, and soil management. The elevation itself provides immediate cooling benefits. Hot air naturally rises, and raised beds allow airflow underneath the growing area that helps dissipate heat buildup. When ground-level soil reaches scorching temperatures during summer afternoons, raised beds maintain cooler root zones because air can circulate around and beneath them. Construction methods vary depending on available materials and family preferences. Some Amish gardeners build frames from rough-cut lumber or stone, while others simply mound soil into raised rows without any formal structure. The height typically ranges from 6 inches to 2 feet, with taller beds providing better drainage and easier access for maintenance work. Flat gardens in hot weather are like sleeping on the floor when there's a perfectly good bed available. Technically, both work, but one is definitely more comfortable. Soil composition in raised beds becomes crucial for heat management. Amish gardeners fill their beds with mixtures of native soil, composted manure, and organic matter that create loose, well-draining growing medium. This contrasts sharply with the heavy, compacted soil that often develops in ground-level gardens, especially in high-traffic areas. The improved drainage helps plants handle both drought and excess moisture more effectively. During dry periods, the loose soil in raised beds holds available moisture longer than compacted ground-level soil. When heavy rains arrive, raised beds drain excess water quickly instead of becoming waterlogged, which prevents root rot and other moisture-related problems. Spacing between raised beds serves multiple purposes beyond just providing walking paths. These gaps allow air circulation that helps moderate temperatures throughout the garden area. They also prevent the soil compaction that happens when people walk directly on growing areas, maintaining the loose soil structure that roots need for healthy development. The depth of soil in raised beds allows for better root development than many ground-level gardens can provide. With 12 to 18 inches of loose, fertile growing medium, plants can establish strong root systems that are better equipped to handle heat stress and drought conditions. Shallow soils force roots to spread horizontally near the surface where they're vulnerable to temperature extremes. Maintenance work becomes much easier with properly constructed raised beds. Weeding, harvesting, and soil cultivation can be done without bending over as much, which is important for gardeners of all ages. The defined borders also make it easier to apply mulch, compost, and other soil amendments exactly where they're needed. Water management improves significantly with raised bed systems. Irrigation water stays where it's applied instead of running off to areas where it's not needed. This efficiency becomes especially valuable during dry periods when every gallon of water needs to count. The loose soil structure also allows water to penetrate evenly throughout the root zone. Season extension becomes possible with raised beds because they warm up faster in spring and maintain better growing conditions later into fall. The elevated soil catches more sun exposure and drains better after cold rains, creating conditions that allow earlier planting and later harvests than ground-level gardens can provide. Different crops benefit from different bed heights and soil mixtures. Deep-rooted vegetables like carrots and potatoes do well in taller beds with loose soil, while shallow-rooted crops like lettuce perform fine in shorter beds. Heat-loving plants appreciate the warming benefits of elevation, while cool-season crops benefit from the improved drainage and air circulation. But even the best raised bed design can only work as well as the soil mixture that fills it allows. Healthy soil acts like a giant sponge, soaking up water during wet periods and releasing it slowly to plants when dry weather hits. Amish gardeners spend years building this kind of soil through constant additions of organic matter that transforms ordinary dirt into a living system capable of surviving extended droughts. The foundation starts with composted manure from horses, cattle, and chickens that provides both nutrients and organic structure. This isn't fresh manure that can burn plants, but material that's been aged for at least a year until it becomes dark, crumbly, and sweet-smelling. The decomposed organic matter creates millions of tiny spaces in the soil that hold both air and water. Kitchen scraps join the soil building program too. Vegetable peelings, eggshells, coffee grounds, and other organic waste get composted and worked into garden beds. This constant recycling of nutrients creates a closed-loop system where nothing goes to waste and everything contributes to better growing conditions. Good soil holds water like a well-made sponge. Poor soil lets water run through it like a colander, which explains why some gardens need watering twice a day while others thrive on neglect. Leaf mold becomes another crucial component of water-holding soil. Fallen leaves collected each autumn get piled in designated areas where they slowly decompose over months or years. The resulting leaf mold has an incredible capacity to absorb and hold moisture, sometimes holding up to 5 times its own weight in water. The transformation process takes time but creates dramatic results. Soil that started as hard-packed clay or sandy loam gradually develops the texture and water-holding capacity that allows plants to survive weeks without irrigation. This improvement happens gradually over several growing seasons as organic matter accumulates and soil organisms multiply. Earthworms serve as living soil processors that accelerate the improvement process. These creatures eat organic matter and excrete castings that have superior water-holding properties compared to regular soil. A garden with healthy earthworm populations automatically develops better moisture retention as the worms work their way through the soil structure. The chemistry of organic soil creates conditions that help plants handle drought stress. Organic matter releases nutrients slowly over time, which means plants don't experience the boom and bust cycles that come with chemical fertilizers. This steady nutrition helps plants develop stronger root systems and better drought tolerance. Soil structure becomes as important as soil chemistry for water retention. Organic matter creates aggregates that give soil a crumbly texture with both large and small pore spaces. Large pores allow excess water to drain quickly, preventing waterlogging, while small pores hold water for plant use during dry periods. The biological activity in organic soil continues working even during dry spells. Beneficial bacteria and fungi form partnerships with plant roots that help them access water and nutrients more efficiently. These microscopic helpers can actually extend the effective reach of root systems, allowing plants to find moisture in soil zones they couldn't access alone. Testing soil improvement is simple but revealing. A handful of healthy organic soil should hold together when squeezed but crumble easily when disturbed. Water poured on good soil should soak in quickly rather than running off the surface. During dry periods, organic soil stays moist several inches down, while poor soil becomes dust dry near the surface. The investment in soil building pays dividends for decades. Gardens with properly developed organic soil need less frequent watering, produce higher yields, and support healthier plants that resist disease and pest problems better than those grown in poor soil. But even the best soil works most effectively when plants are arranged to take advantage of natural cooling and protection systems. Nature doesn't arrange plants randomly, and neither do experienced Amish gardeners. They've learned to use tall crops as living umbrellas that protect smaller, more delicate plants from the scorching afternoon sun that can destroy tender vegetables in a matter of hours. Corn serves as the backbone of many shading strategies because it grows tall quickly and creates dense shade without completely blocking airflow. A row of corn planted on the western side of a lettuce patch will cast protective shadows during the hottest part of the day when the sun is most destructive. The corn benefits from the arrangement too, since its deep roots don't compete with the shallow lettuce roots for nutrients. Strategic plant placement is like giving your vegetables their own personal bodyguards. Some plants are tough enough to take the heat, while others need protection to survive. Sunflowers work even better than corn for creating shade because they grow taller and their large leaves create broader shadows. A single row of sunflowers can protect an entire bed of cool season crops during the transition periods when spring vegetables are trying to survive into early summer. The sunflowers also attract beneficial insects that help with pest control throughout the garden. Pole beans climbing on tall supports create vertical shade that works differently from the horizontal shade of low-growing plants. Bean vines trained up poles or trellises form living curtains that block harsh western sun while still allowing morning light to reach protected crops. This vertical shading system uses space efficiently while providing multiple benefits from a single planting area. The timing of shade becomes crucial for different crops throughout the growing season. Cool season vegetables like peas and spinach need protection during late spring when temperatures start climbing, but the plants aren't ready for harvest yet. Heat-sensitive crops like lettuce benefit from afternoon shade all summer long, while morning sun exposure keeps them growing properly. Jerusalem artichokes create excellent windbreaks that also provide shade for smaller crops. These tall, sturdy plants grow quickly and form dense stands that block both sun and hot winds. Unlike annual crops, Jerusalem artichokes are perennial, which means the shade structure improves and expands each year without replanting. Berry canes serve double duty as both crop producers and shade providers. Raspberry and blackberry rows create natural fences that cast shadows while producing fruit. The thorny canes also provide some protection from wildlife that might otherwise damage garden crops, making them useful for perimeter plantings around more vulnerable vegetables. The height differences between companion plants create microclimates that extend growing seasons for heat-sensitive crops. Tall plants moderate temperature swings in their shadow zones, keeping the air several degrees cooler during hot afternoons and slightly warmer during cool mornings. This temperature buffering helps delicate plants survive weather extremes. Spacing calculations become important for effective shading systems. Plants need to be close enough to provide meaningful shade, but far enough apart to avoid competing for nutrients and water. Amish gardeners often use simple rules of thumb like planting shade providers at distances equal to half their mature height from the crops they're protecting. The shade patterns change throughout the day as the sun moves across the sky. Morning shadows fall toward the west, while afternoon shadows stretch toward the east. Understanding these patterns helps gardeners position their shade plants for maximum protection during the hottest parts of the day when plants are most vulnerable to heat stress. Different vegetables require different amounts of shade protection. Leafy greens benefit from heavy shade during hot weather, while root vegetables can tolerate more sun exposure. Heat-loving crops like tomatoes and peppers might only need protection during the very hottest part of summer. But shade alone can't protect gardens when hot, dry winds start stealing moisture faster than plants can replace it. Hot, dry winds can suck the life out of a garden faster than a week without rain. Amish gardeners learned this lesson the hard way and developed windbreak systems that protect their crops without creating new problems or requiring expensive materials. The key to effective windbreaks is understanding that solid barriers often create more turbulence than protection. A solid fence or wall forces wind to go up and over, creating downdrafts on the protected side that can be more damaging than the original wind. Amish windbreaks use plants or structures that slow the wind down rather than stopping it completely. Jerusalem artichokes work exceptionally well as living windbreaks because they grow tall quickly and form dense stands that filter wind without blocking it entirely. These perennial plants reach 6 to 8 feet in height during a single growing season and spread naturally to create thicker barriers over time. They also produce edible tubers, making them productive as well as protective. Building windbreaks is like installing natural air conditioning for your garden. The plants do all the work while you get all the benefits, and nobody has to pay an electric bill. Berry canes create excellent permanent windbreaks that provide both protection and food production. Raspberry and blackberry rows planted along the windward side of gardens create barriers that last for years while producing annual fruit crops. The thorny canes also discourage wildlife from entering garden areas, providing multiple benefits from a single planting. Wooden fencing or slatted barriers work when living windbreaks aren't practical or when immediate protection is needed. The spacing between slats matters tremendously for wind control effectiveness. Barriers that are about 50% open work better than solid walls because they slow wind velocity without creating the turbulence that damages plants on the protected side. The height of windbreaks determines how much area they protect. A general rule is that windbreaks provide meaningful protection for a distance equal to about 10 times their height. A 6-foot windbreak will protect plants up to 60 feet away, though the protection is strongest within the first 30 feet. Multiple windbreak layers create even better protection than single barriers. A combination of tall trees or large shrubs on the outside with shorter barriers closer to the garden creates a stepped system that gradually reduces wind velocity. This layered approach provides more complete protection while avoiding the air turbulence problems that single barriers can create. Wind direction changes throughout the day and with weather patterns, which makes windbreak placement more complex than just blocking the prevailing wind. Hot afternoon winds often come from different directions than cool morning breezes. Effective windbreak systems account for these variations by providing protection from multiple directions. The microclimate effects of windbreaks extend beyond just wind protection. Areas protected by windbreaks typically have higher humidity levels because less moisture gets blown away from plant leaves and soil surfaces. This increased humidity helps plants handle heat stress and reduces their water requirements during dry periods. Maintenance requirements vary depending on the type of windbreak system used. Living windbreaks need occasional pruning and management to maintain their effectiveness, while constructed barriers require periodic repairs and replacement. The long-term benefits usually justify the maintenance effort, especially in areas with frequent high winds. Economic benefits include reduced water usage, higher crop survival rates, and extended growing seasons in protected areas. Gardens with effective windbreak protection often produce significantly higher yields than exposed gardens, especially during challenging weather years when wind and heat stress become major limiting factors. Different crops benefit from different levels of wind protection. Tall plants like corn and sunflowers can handle moderate winds but suffer in strong gusts that can break stems or blow plants over. Smaller, tender crops like lettuce and herbs need more complete wind protection to prevent desiccation and physical damage. But even the best wind protection works most effectively when combined with plant varieties that naturally work well together. Three Sisters Gardening represents one of the most elegant examples of companion planting that Amish communities have perfected over generations. Corn, beans, and squash grown together create a living system where each plant helps the others survive and thrive, even during the toughest summer conditions. The corn provides a natural trellis for the beans to climb, eliminating the need for artificial support structures. As the beans grow up the corn stalks, they fix nitrogen from the air and share it with their companions through their root systems. The squash spreads along the ground with large leaves that shade the soil, keeping it cool and moist while preventing weeds from taking hold. This partnership works because each plant occupies a different layer of the growing space. The corn reaches for the sky, the beans climb the middle zone, and the squash covers the ground level. None of them compete directly with the others for light, space, or nutrients. Instead, they complement each other's needs and create a microenvironment that's cooler and more moisture retentive than any of the plants could achieve alone. Companion planting is like arranging a good marriage. When the right partners work together, everybody benefits. When the wrong ones get stuck together, everybody suffers. The cooling effects of this three-plant system become obvious during hot weather. The large squash leaves create a living mulch that keeps soil temperatures 10 to 15 degrees cooler than bare ground. The beans add nitrogen naturally, which helps all three plants stay green and vigorous during stress periods. The corn provides wind protection for the more delicate bean and squash plants below. Other successful companion combinations follow similar principles of mutual benefit rather than competition. Tomatoes paired with basil create a partnership where the basil helps repel insects that damage tomatoes, while the tomato plants provide just enough shade to keep the basil from bolting in extreme heat. The different root depths mean they're not fighting for the same soil nutrients. Lettuce and onions work together because onions help repel pests that attack lettuce, while the lettuce provides ground cover that helps keep onion roots cool and moist. The onion's vertical growth doesn't shade the lettuce significantly, while the lettuce's horizontal growth helps conserve soil moisture that both plants need. Marigolds scattered throughout vegetable gardens serve as living pest control that protects more valuable food crops. These flowers release compounds that discourage harmful insects and nematodes while attracting beneficial predatory insects that help control garden pests naturally. The bright flowers also make the garden more attractive without taking up space that could be used for food production. The spacing in companion planting systems requires careful planning to maximize benefits while avoiding overcrowding. Plants need to be close enough to help each other, but far enough apart to avoid competing for resources. Traditional Amish spacing methods use simple measurements like steps or arm lengths rather than precise measurements, creating systems that work reliably without requiring complex calculations. Water usage decreases significantly in well-designed companion planting systems. The ground coverage provided by spreading plants like squash reduces evaporation from soil surfaces. The wind protection from taller plants reduces moisture loss from plant leaves. The improved soil health from nitrogen-fixing plants helps all the companions retain and use water more efficiently. Pest management becomes easier with diverse plantings because insects that specialize in attacking specific crops have trouble finding their preferred hosts when they're mixed with other plants. The diverse scents and chemical signals from multiple plant species confuse pests while attracting beneficial insects that help keep harmful populations under control. Harvest timing can be coordinated so that companion plants mature at different times, extending the productive period of each garden space. Early maturing crops can be harvested and cleared while their companions continue growing, allowing efficient use of limited garden space throughout the entire growing season. The soil improvement effects of companion planting accumulate over time as different root systems contribute organic matter at various soil depths, and nitrogen-fixing plants add fertility naturally. But even the best companion planting arrangements depend on having plant varieties that are naturally adapted to local growing conditions. Seed catalogs promise perfect vegetables that will grow anywhere under any conditions. But Amish gardeners know better than to trust marketing over generations of hard-earned experience. They've learned that the best seeds for surviving extreme heat are the ones that have already survived extreme heat in their own gardens, year after year. Every autumn brings the crucial work of seed selection and saving. But this isn't random collecting from whatever happened to grow well. Amish families carefully choose seeds from the specific plants that thrive during the worst weather of the season. The tomato plant that kept producing during a 3-week heat wave gets its seeds saved. The bean plant that survived when others withered gets priority treatment for next year's garden. This selection process works like natural evolution, but much faster. Over just a few growing seasons, saved seeds develop characteristics that help them handle local weather patterns, soil conditions, and pest pressures. A family that starts with ordinary grocery store tomatoes might end up with varieties that can survive temperatures and conditions that would kill the original parent plants. Buying new seeds every year is like hiring strangers to do a job when you already have experienced workers who know exactly what they're doing. Sometimes the newcomers work out, but the veterans already know the territory. The genetic diversity within saved seed populations provides insurance against changing conditions. Commercial hybrid seeds are bred for uniformity, which means they all succeed or fail under the same conditions. Saved seeds from open-pollinated varieties include natural variation that helps ensure some plants will survive even if conditions change unexpectedly. Documentation becomes part of the seed-saving tradition, though it might be as simple as verbal knowledge passed between generations. Families remember which varieties perform best during specific challenging years, like the drought of a particular summer or the late frost that killed most seedlings. This institutional memory guides seed selection decisions and helps preserve varieties that might be needed again. Storage methods protect the viability of saved seeds for years or even decades. Seeds kept in cool, dry conditions maintain their germination rates much longer than seeds stored in hot, humid environments. Many Amish families use simple storage containers like glass jars or cloth bags kept in root cellars or other naturally cool spaces. The adaptation process continues even after seeds are planted. Plants that grow from saved seeds often show improved performance compared to their parents because they're already adapted to local growing conditions. This improvement continues generation after generation as long as seed saving continues, and selection pressure favors plants that handle local challenges. Trading networks between Amish families and communities expand the genetic base while maintaining the focus on locally adapted varieties. Seeds that perform well in one location might be shared with neighbors who face similar growing conditions. This exchange prevents inbreeding while preserving the local adaptation that makes these varieties valuable. Testing and comparison help identify the best performers for specific conditions. Some families plant small test plots with both saved seeds and new varieties to see which perform better under current conditions. The saved seeds usually win, especially during challenging weather years when their local adaptation becomes most valuable. The time investment in seed saving pays dividends for generations. Families that have been saving seeds for decades often have varieties that consistently outperform anything available commercially, especially during extreme weather conditions. These seeds represent living libraries of genetic adaptation that can't be bought at any price. But even the best seeds need growing methods that help them reach their full potential. Stop watering completely. That sounds like gardening suicide to most people, but Amish dry farming techniques prove that plants can not only survive without irrigation, they can actually become stronger and more productive when forced to develop self-reliance. The transition happens gradually, not all at once. Young plants receive regular water until their root systems establish and reach about 6 inches deep. Then the watering schedule gets stretched out, forcing roots to grow deeper in search of moisture. Eventually, watering stops entirely, except during the most extreme drought conditions. This process trains plants to become water detectives, sending roots down 2, 3, or even 4 feet to find moisture that exists naturally in the soil. Most gardeners never realize how much water sits below the surface because their plants never learn to access it. Shallow watering creates shallow roots that depend on constant attention instead of developing independence. Teaching plants to find their own water is like teaching kids to tie their shoes. It takes more effort up front, but eventually they stop needing help with every little thing. The soil preparation for dry farming requires different thinking than conventional gardening. Deep cultivation in spring breaks up compacted layers that prevent roots from penetrating to water sources below. Organic matter gets worked deeper into the soil profile, not just spread on top, creating pathways for roots to follow downward. Timing becomes critical for dry farming success. Plants need to establish their deep root systems during cool, moist spring conditions when digging deep doesn't stress them. Starting the dry farming process during hot weather usually fails because plants can't develop the root infrastructure they need while also dealing with heat stress. Crop selection makes the difference between success and failure with dry farming methods. Beans, squash, potatoes, and corn adapt well to dry farming because they naturally develop extensive root systems when given the right conditions. Shallow-rooted crops like lettuce and radishes are poor candidates for dry farming because they can't physically reach deep water sources. The results become obvious during drought years when irrigated gardens struggle and dry farm plots continue producing normally. Plants that have learned to find their own water don't suffer when surface moisture disappears. Their deep root systems tap into soil moisture reserves that remain available even when the top several inches of soil become dust dry. Plant spacing changes with dry farming because each plant needs access to a larger volume of soil to find adequate moisture. Traditional intensive spacing works when water gets applied regularly, but dry farm plants need more room to spread their roots without competing directly with neighbors. Mulching takes on different importance in dry farming systems. Heavy mulch conserves what little moisture reaches the soil surface and prevents it from evaporating before plant roots can access it. The mulch also moderates soil temperature swings that can stress plants trying to survive on limited water. Weather monitoring becomes more important with dry farming because natural rainfall patterns determine when intervention might be necessary. Plants trained to dry farming conditions can survive longer dry spells than irrigated plants, but extreme drought conditions may still require emergency watering to prevent crop loss. The economic benefits of dry farming extend beyond water savings. Plants that don't depend on irrigation systems require less infrastructure, less labor for watering, and lower ongoing costs for water and equipment maintenance. The initial investment in soil preparation and training pays dividends for years as plants become increasingly self-sufficient. Harvest quality often improves with dry farming methods because plants develop more concentrated flavors when they're not diluted with excess water. Root vegetables grown with dry farming techniques typically have better storage qualities and more intense tastes than heavily irrigated crops. This approach represents the ultimate goal of sustainable gardening, creating systems that work with natural conditions rather than fighting against them through constant inputs and intervention. The Amish relied on methods that worked with heat, not against it. Their quiet success is rooted in preparation, soil care, and smart planting. The result? Stronger crops, fewer losses, and gardens that don't just survive, but thrive. Maybe it's time we borrow a few of their secrets.